All right, we're broadcasting. Matt knows. Oh, hold on a sec. My set sucks.
Okay, fix it. He's got his fix. That's a nice picture. You put that on. That was like on Facebook. I've seen that.
Thought you weren't on social media.
I said, wow.
This is going to be, I love this. We're going to be joking around the whole time, and people are just going to have no idea what we're laughing at, but I love it.
Nope. Inside jokes, huge.
Just dry humor. We're just going to take people inside the clubhouse, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Don't say anything you'll regret.
So I'll take.
I've never done anything like this before, so I got to worry about what I say.
No.
You're gonna be in trouble, Jim.
I know. You know me, Steph.
Yeah, you're gonna be in trouble.
you know I'm not worried about it though.
I know. You're like, whatever. I don't think there's ever any topic that Jim has ever shied away from.
That is absolutely the truth. And I think everybody who knows me probably knows that about me. So
it's gonna be fun.
I love a good conversation, man.
I told him about how when I got sent down to back to minor leagues from big league camp, and like the day I got there, it was like raining, remember? And you guys were having like this big philosophical conversation in front of my locker. And it was like everybody was just gathered around. I was like, what the heck is going on right here? And you were
welcome, Steph. I don't know why. I always just find myself in the middle of those things. It just finds me. It finds me.
There was like, Matt, I want to say there was about 15 dudes just sitting in a little cramped space trying to like get in on this conversation. And me and Shelby were like, just like, what are they talking about?
Oh, man.
I remember, well, Jim, me and Steph had a whole conversation on whether the sun is a ball of gas or a star. And there was a conversation I remember with you. It was you, me, and one of the assistant coaches. Remember Moore, I think his name is, the old guy? I remember it was in a rain delay. And I can't remember what we were talking about, but it was something serious. I feel like it may have been religion. I feel like it was religion.
Yeah, it probably was. Moore was like the quote unquote, he was the first base coach, but he was like the quote unquote chaplain of the team, so to speak.
Right.
And, he was a good personality and like strong convictions. So
yes,
he was fun to conversate with. And I knew you were like a deep thinker, I guess I would describe you as.
I think about
so.
Things.
It's not surprising that we found ourselves in that sort of conversation.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and I was also telling, I don't know how much you pay attention, Jim, or even Stefan too, to what we are live.
Yeah.
We're broadcasting. We're good. How much you pay attention to the White Sox now?
Yeah.
But they just had a what the hell's going on? There we go. We just had a the White Sox took a bunch of players down to the DR for like a little pre-spring training deal. Oh, this is not gonna work. And they were like they caught video of them like having a conversation about like, space. We're all just space cadets.
Well, that's the really the really cool thing about baseball. That maybe people don't. I think maybe people get it, but there's so much downtime in baseball. Mm-hmm. And I remember, and I'm not taking it to a somber point, but I really think about this in the context of the 2011 season. That was when Steph and I were in Charlotte. Mm-hmm. We had started the year living together, and then he ended up getting traded over to Atlanta. And my mom ended up passing away in the middle of that season.
That's right.
And I had, left the team for a short period of time. And, when I was getting ready to come back, everybody was like, hey, it'll be really good for you to get back and take your mind off things. And the funny thing about that is like baseball is not like football or basketball where everything happens so fast that you can't think about anything, right?
Yeah.
I'm standing around at first base or the outfield or sitting in the dugout, and all you do is think about things other than baseball.
Yeah.
So, it wasn't just a simple thing to get back there and all my mind's off of this, unfortunate situation. That's the reality of baseball. And I love that about it because I like to have conversation with people. So when I'm on the bench in the dugout, I could be talking about anything.
Yeah.
You see people talking in the dugout on TV, and you can almost bet your bottom dollar they're probably not talking about pitch selection or that sort of thing. Not that those conversations don't take place, but
right, exactly.
They could theoretically be talking about anything, space included.
Space included in the middle of like the fifth inning of a tie ball game.
Very true.
Yeah, right. Season on the line.
Yep. Season on the line. Oh, I'm up. I'm on deck. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Cool.
Games well, play too. Even just the games that you play on the bench just to fill the time.
Yeah.
Too. There's a lot of crazy, stupid stuff that goes on during a baseball game that has nothing to do with the game.
Oh, Tim,
the game is such a mental beatdown.
It is. It's a grind.
So you have to be able to, have moments where you're not thinking about, gosh, if you're really good, you're hitting 300, and that's still a lot of failure to deal with.
Yeah.
So, to be able to have a moment to think about something other than how often you're failing,
exactly.
you got to have that. You got to have that. And I love the idea of, being focused on the game and all that stuff. But, when you're a professional, it's just the expectation that you're prepared and ready to go. So,
this is perfect. This is exactly what I wanted to talk about. So let's get started. I'm going to just kind of like roll this right into our conversation. So
cool.
We're live. Welcome to the Pinwheels and Ivy podcast. I'm going to do a little, I don't even know if I have to do the whole intro, but welcome to the Pinwheels and Ivy podcast special edition. We're going to talk a lot about spring training this year, or this episode. And we've got two guys, both who I played with, one with the White Sox and one I wasn't around long enough to play with the White Sox, but I played with him in a collegiate league in Virginia the year before I was drafted. So I'm really happy to have Jim Gallagher and Stephen Gartrell join and just chit-chat about spring training, baseball in general. So what's up, guys?
What's up, man?
Living the dream.
Living the dream. Now, so we are scattered all over the country. Stephen is out in San Francisco. I'm in New Jersey. And Jim Gallagher is in Pittsburgh. So, we were having such a great conversation. We never would have even really gone live just talking about baseball in general. So we'll go all over the place. But let's talk about spring training first. Now, Jim, I'll start with you because I already know most of Stefan's first spring training because I was there for at least 2 weeks of it. So I know it all. Take us back to that feeling of your first spring training after being drafted and playing that season. Kind of like your first impressions, really, of walking in and meeting the rest of the organization for the first time.
It was obviously a unique experience, like nothing I've ever been a part of before.
Yeah.
And such a collection of talent around you. It's humbling. And you're there, you see all the big leaguers doing their stuff. You're not necessarily with them, but everybody is all together. And I found it to be a really, really humbling experience, just as a person, but also as a player, because physically I wasn't really ready. I came from Pittsburgh, and every spring training, everybody would make a comment about how pale I was. Like I'd been in a closet the whole off season hiding, and I hadn't seen the sun. So, I basically just got batting practice, somebody throwing me flips or, BP. And that was my preparation for the season. So when I stepped out there, you hadn't seen, 95 or not even 90 in 3 or 4 months. So It was a humbling experience, both from the standpoint of, wow, you're just surrounded by a collection of athletes, and there was so much on the line, right? Like it meant
Right.
so much to all of us. Yeah, we were in minor league camp, but everybody there felt like they had a chance to go to the big leagues,
Right.
and that's what we were all working towards. And, to be there and to see guys' dreams be realized and shattered, it was a really, really humbling experience. I
Right.
would say that's the best way for me to describe it. It was
So,
humbling.
so you were drafted in '07, you said, or '08? You were '08, weren't you?
I was 07. '08 was my first full season.
Okay. So you were drafted in '07, and your last season was 2013, 2012?
Yeah, I played the 2013 season, and I tried to play again in 14, but didn't end up working out.
Yeah.
Right. So all of those things. Now, so the one difference between Jim and me and Stefan were late round picks. Stefan was 31st round, same year, and I was the 36th round. Jim, you were 7th round?
7th round, yeah.
7th round. So when you say you got to be prepared and humbling and you're all there trying to realize this dream, there are some players that know they have a little bit of a safety net, a little bit of a cushion and a leash. Did you feel that way? Because you were 7th round. You probably got decent money.
So that's a really good question. And to be honest with you, and I don't know if this is, maybe I should have, I don't want to say taken it more seriously, but I never felt,
right?
I never felt the pressure of whether or not I even had a job until that 2013 season. That last season that I played, that was the first time where they do the one-on-one meetings with you, and they try and lay it out exactly where you stand in their eyes. And that was the first time that I had a one-on-one with them, and they were like, "Hey, we don't know how these rosters are going to shake out. We want to find a spot for you, but you got to go out and do your thing." That was in spring training, yeah. So you sit down in a room with Buddy Bell and Cappy and whoever, and they're pretty honest with you. And that was the first time that I felt like, wow. And I knew it. I knew it going in. Like Steph, you know
get a
this.
Feel for it.
You have a feel for where you stand. If you don't have a feel for it, then I'm not sure where your head's at in general. And when I went into that first spring training, it was humbling, but I also knew that I wasn't in jeopardy of being cut or released or whatever. But
now guys like me and Stefan, guys like Stefan. Now, Stefan had an equally long career in the bigs. You were, now just to put it all out there, both Jim and Stefan made it to AAA. They were bona fide prospects, guys that got, I don't know, Jim, did you get a big league invite, a big league camp invite?
Yeah, I did.
Right. So you and Stefan both had big league camp invites. You got big league at bats in spring training. You were in AAA. You virtually could feel it. Like, all right, just waiting for that gap to open up in the roster, and I can get my cup of coffee and see if I can hang. Now, Stefan is a 31st round pick. When you were in 2006, your first season, you mashed. You hit over 300. You were the one solid, consistent offensive player in our lineup. When you got to spring training the next year, now I should also say that Stefan jumped like 4 levels for the last 2 weeks of the year, or after our season was over in Bristol. You were presented AA for 2 weeks, right?
Yep. Yeah,
so you did that, then you did instructs in the fall, and then we come into spring training. Did you feel that sense of? Were you nervous at all? You were never nervous.
I wasn't that nervous because of everything you said. I was way nervous showing up to Bristol, and like really nervous because I didn't know what I was like, what pro ball was like, and how just Bristol, Virginia period was. And so I was super nervous there. But then when I got called up to at the end of the season in Bristol to AA, and then playing there and meeting like a lot more of the guys, that made it easier because I saw more of the organization and I knew more of the players. And then also going to Instructs was like introducing me to even more of the players and the coaches and everybody. So when I showed up to spring training, I was like, hey, I already know everybody.
Yeah, right. Yeah, everybody's familiar.
Yeah. So, and the biggest thing was in Instructs, after speaking to Debo, he was like,
That's Daryl Boston for everyone.
Daryl Boston.
We know him as Debo.
He was like, hey, yeah, he told me, like, with Jim, how he was just kind of hitting front toss and stuff like that. He was like, make sure you come in ready, like to hit 95, ready to do like hit bombs and do all this stuff. Be in shape. Be like, he goes trim down a little bit and try to be as fast as you possibly can. All this stuff. So during the off season, like after Instructs, I was like working my butt off every day with my college team at USF. So I was like, pretty much kind of had a little inside way to do well, but
you could also get outside, right? I mean, in San Francisco, you do have that microclimate where you can go out on the field, you can take live BP, you can take fly balls, that kind of stuff. So Jim and I over here in the Northeast,
screwed.
I know exactly what Jim was talking about. Where I mean, you were an infielder, correct? Right? You played first. Did you, or were you an outfielder?
So I was drafted as an outfielder. I played that summer and my first full season in Kannapolis strictly in the outfield. So it wasn't until instructional league after Kannapolis that I moved. Well, I don't want to say moved, but they sent me there to basically learn first base.
For you. Right.
Yeah.
So, you know, it is night and day, the outfield to the infield, as far as preparation goes. You know, are we all superior athletic enough to get out there and catch a fly ball, you know, day one? Yeah, we can do that. We can chase them down and read them and do all that. But, man, I remember a ground ball, and I remember being told the same thing, Stefan, that you were told, not by Debo, but by my scout, who I called after the season. It's like, you better be ready day one. This is not like, let's get in shape, ease into it. And it was literally like, you know, I remember maybe like 3 days of hard ground balls and maybe like 30 minutes of it. You take like maybe 2 days of live BP, not tracking, like you better get in there and get your hacks, you know, to prove you can hang. And then it's like, you know, games, you're flying, you know, back and forth. And that's when we were in Tucson.
Yeah.
I don't know if Jim, did you ever go to Tucson? As I think we moved to Glendale.
My first spring training was in Tucson, and I didn't enjoy it.
I didn't enjoy it.
You're so far removed from everyone.
Yeah.
Right? It's like
I didn't enjoy it at all.
Like you're playing Colorado, you're playing the Rockies 4 times a week because you just don't feel like flying, you know, going all the way out.
Yeah, that's it.
Up to Phoenix. So that kind of preparation. So what I think a lot of fans, you know, how we watch the game is much different, and how we perceive spring training, even how I perceive spring training compared to you guys, because I remember showing up to spring training. I had put about 25 pounds of muscle on. I was in the best baseball shape of my life. I was near 200 pounds, and I had lost. I mean, like, and we'll get into this, the grind of the season and what it does to your body. I remember playing in Bristol. I lost 15 pounds.
Yeah,
I was the lightest I had been since high school. And then I jumped. Yeah, I mean, I was 160 pounds. I went at 185, and I go back to spring training at 198. I was like, I had never physically felt as strong as I was to be there. But you know, I was there for 2 weeks, and then it was like, see you later, thanks for coming. But you guys, you know, you got into a groove. Both of you were there long enough to understand, all right, how do I get into this 130 game grind, and how do I work this 9 months? And we'll start with you, Jim. You know, what was your mission after like your second spring training, third spring training, you start to understand how to get through the season? What was your kind of your formula for success to get through that season? What did you do in spring training?
So I hate to take it in a different direction, but for me, I felt like the hardest part was the mental grind of the season. Physically, when that season was over, I never felt, I don't know how Steph felt or you know, how you felt at the end of that year in Bristol, but I never felt like at the end of the season, physically, I was cashed out. It was always mentally that I was completely cashed out.
Yeah.
Like I need a mental break here. So,
so what do you mean by mental break?
For me,
explain that to fans. What do you mean by mental? Like, take us through a day of mentally preparing yourself, going through a game, processing it afterwards, and then doing it all over again the next day.
So I don't necessarily know that. There's you have a lifting routine that you're in, right? You have, on this day you're doing this, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever. You got a running piece to stay in shape throughout the season. Yeah, you do that stuff. But just from a mental side of things, I mean, it could be anything. There's all sorts of different vices that people have. Some are good and some are bad. Some are beneficial and, some are detrimental. So, for me, I was a social guy. I enjoyed, coming back to the apartments after games and, you have a drink or you spend some time hanging out with, the other guys and, you shoot the shit.
Right.
And, you talk through whatever. So just being social and not getting, the reality of the season is you prepare to play every day at this level. And it's really hard to actually be at that level every day. So you're failing. You're not reaching that level on a day-to-day. So you're literally riding this roller coaster of every single day, achieving and not achieving. So that just takes its toll. And, throughout the course of a season, you have to be able to find a way to deal with that. And everybody has their own, like I said, vices.
Right.
Some people play video games. Some people go to the bar. Some people go to the bar every night. Everybody does something different. So
here's something that I think really matters to this discussion. And I'm really glad you brought up the mental aspect, because you can absolutely, that's more of the physical preparation is all done by the time you get to spring training, right?
Yes.
You are at that physical peak. And you just have to maintain that, right? Physically. Yep. And that is the tough part. But the mental part, the going into each at bat, trying to figure out what the pitcher's doing, you're fighting the strike zone because it's nose to toes tonight, the umpire's not knowing what's going on, or you're just like, I remember playing 30 days straight one time, and it was one of the first times I ever thought about going to Cuz, Steph, and saying, Can I please have a break? Can I please have a break? I remember I tweaked a quad on like day 28 at Elizabethan, and I came back into the dugout, talked to the training team, and I'm like, I don't know if I did something. And basically they said, "Can you play?" Not like, "Let's see what we can do." It was like, "Can you play?" And I'm like,
Corey said that.
Yeah, and he walked away. He's like, "All right, I'm taking you out." And I was like, "No, I'm fine." And I went up and I hit a home run. So
I remember that.
So anyway, but it was like it was an eye-opening experience. So mentally, I mean, like physically, you enter spring training and you're just like, I just got to keep it here and keep it there. But mentally, tracking pitches, seeing, understanding what cutters are doing now, like, there's so much situational defense. So the mental fatigue is something, and that's really important. And we all came from college programs.
Yep.
Right? College programs, college ball players are different than high school ball players.
Yes, we are.
We learned that, Stefan and I, and I'm sure you did too, Jim, a little bit.
It's a fact.
When we showed up to our spot, every team I had played on coming up to being drafted, like guys went out. Guys had a good time. We all hung out together. Yep. We bonded. You had this. Stefan and I showed up, and in Bristol, man, it was a weird experience. There was one night where we all went out, and like some people like to have a drink, some people didn't. So some people just didn't drink, and we all went out together one time.
Yep.
And the rest of the time it was like, what are we doing, guys? Like, I don't even know half of you. And not that you have to go out and do debaucherous things to get to know each other, but you kind of bond in that way, right?
Yeah.
I mean, So Steph, I'll let you get to how you prepared as well, but I think there's also, I'd like us to start thinking about this element where like Brian Kenny likes to like kill culture, like doesn't think that clubhouse culture is important, that you should just basically buy the best WAR players and then just like, stats. So, I mean, that's
we need to get, I could talk, we could talk about that for sure, but okay. Steph, why don't you?
So Steph, take us through your process, because you had a long career as well. So go ahead.
Well, let's see, the mental aspect, the physical aspect. Which one? Which one do you want me to talk
about? Steph, if I'm evaluating you, I don't think you thought much up there. I think you were like, get bat, swing hard. You were like Pedro Serrano up there, and Steph, literally you just ran into it.
Steph was always happy-go-lucky, man.
Yeah, I just like he'd come back once or twice and say, I should have not swung at that curveball. And I'm like,
yeah, right.
What do you mean?
He just waved the curveball on the dirt for strike 3. Yeah,
whatever.
I shouldn't have swung at that.
Did you see that? I swung at a changeup. Oh, wow. Yeah, I saw that. Anyway,
to be honest, I think a big part of the mental side for me though was trying not to take everything I was doing so seriously. Mm-hmm. It started in college for me because even though like being drafted in the 31st round was not the first time I was like considered not to be
right. I remember you explaining this, and explain a little bit of that.
Yeah. So out of high school in San Francisco, like baseball's not that big of a deal. So I didn't get scouted really well. Like more people knew me as a basketball player than they did as a baseball player. And then, so I was always like better than the kids, like when I was in high school and middle school. So coaches never really coached me. They just were like, oh, there's this really athletic black kid and he's hitting the ball. Who cares what his mechanics are like? Let's just let him go. So when I went to college, my mechanics were terrible. And so I had to like change how I hit, change how I did through and everything. Cause people still make fun of how I throw because they're like, oh
my God, yeah.
They're like, everything's so terrible. And so I was just like trying to figure stuff out. And so my freshman year to like the beginning of my sophomore year was just a grind, was terrible. So for me to like get past like, oh my gosh, this is like the worst thing that's ever happened to me, the first time I've ever struggled. So when I was able to get over that and kind of just like not take myself so seriously, be cool with like changing and tinkering with like listening to people, then I was like, okay. So when I got to pro ball, I was using that same mindset like the entire time. Mm-hmm. Like when I'd strike out, like you guys saw, I'd be pissed that I struck out, but I wasn't like breaking my bat.
Let's be honest, you weren't Bo Jacksoning a bat. You weren't chucking water coolers. You were like, God dang it.
Yeah, that was literally what I said. Like, if anybody's listening, well, everybody who's listening, I should say, I would literally say, God dang it. That would be it.
People watching, don't worry. And they're probably all family members that we told.
Yeah, all my family.
All your family. Though, like when you got, so you're, like mentally preparing yourself, figuring out how to handle failure, right? Isn't that a big part, I think, of what Jim was saying is like, how do you handle success and failure? And you can't be too high, you can't be too low. You got to maintain an even keel. And, we had college, all three of us had college to kind of figure that out a little bit and maybe have that big, because I remember I had that very low swale in my career. I was like, oh my God, I'm terrible. I can't figure it out. I can't rise to the competition, whatever. So we had those coping mechanisms going into pro ball, but what about physically?
Physically was, I think for me, it was different. It was, cause it came down to what they wanted me to do. That was like a big part of everything for me because I wasn't. Remember in rookie ball in Bristol, I had the whole conversation with Jerry Hairston where he was all like, "You're hitting too many doubles. Those need to be home runs." Like I was batting like 320, but he was like, "These doubles need to be home runs." Mm-hmm. And I remember that whole thing where I was like, oh, okay. So I changed my swing. Yeah, I know. I'm bad. Like, so he changed my swing, the way I make contact, like all sorts of my approach, everything, because it was like these, like you're 6'3", at the time 235. Now it's way more than 235. But he was like,
we're all around that, I think.
Yeah, and so I was like, man. So with that kind of changed how I lifted, because then it was like, okay, he's gonna have to be a power guy. Like I had power in me, but even in college, I would drive runners in, but I wasn't like a home run hitter. I was just a run producer.
Well, let's be honest; those pro balls are charged, man. I remember you.
They were 2 years ago.
They were 2 years ago, no? Or they?
Oh, they were.
Oh, yeah. Oh my God! I remember. I'd hit like I know I got underneath something or just missed it, and I'm like, dang it, running to first base, right, Steph?
Yeah.
And drift all the way out to the wall, and I'm like, I didn't hit that ball that hard.
Yep.
So those balls. I always said it was like hitting a golf ball, because those things fly.
And then especially if you're in Arizona. Whew.
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought up power. So let's talk about a current thing in baseball. I don't know how much you guys pay attention to, all these different things in baseball and trends. Launch angle. Who wants to go first?
Honestly, I don't have much to say about it. I don't ever remember thinking about.
You don't think about it. Did anyone ever tell you to get underneath?
Yeah. No, it's like you had certain counts that you were looking for a pitch to drive.
Right.
Yeah. But you were who you were as a hitter, and I feel like if you were smart enough, you tried to stay within yourself. You knew what you were good at. You knew what you weren't good at. The whole idea of launch angle, like I'm going to think about
trying to hit the ball at a 45 degree
percentage. Angle. Yeah. I mean, I think philosophically, if the idea is, we don't care about strikeouts anymore, then that's a different thing altogether, because when we played, it was like, you can't strike out. Do not strike out. Like, put the ball in play. So
God.
So when we played, I think the thing that I felt like was becoming, popular with a lot of coaches that I felt like I was around, was having a 2-strike approach.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's the complete opposite of
everything's going on now.
Yeah, I mean, we're okay if you strike out a little bit more. So you take that last strike, and you take your rip. You don't shorten up or do anything. So
right.
I think a good hitter's gonna stick to what he's good at, and if that means like a hitter like Steph tries to just go deep all the time, that's one thing. A hitter like me is going to just stay as a line drive hitter.
Right.
That would be the smart approach as far as I'm concerned. But what do I know?
Yeah, right. But you guys came up. You guys were in the very beginning of analytics, and analytics really coming into. Like, I was never in a clubhouse where I had an iPad or any kind of blast motion data or swing, whatever they've got now.
Yeah.
I never had that. Did you guys?
Yes, I did.
You did, Steph?
Yeah. So when I was with the Braves, the 3 years I was there, they started really like breaking down a lot of the stuff that we were doing, like our swings and what count, all this stuff. Like, you're getting more and more number stuff. And it was good sometimes. Like, for me, I like the fact that there was like video. I didn't like the number stuff, because I felt like if certain numbers, like, you don't hit a slider, right? And they'll be like, well, if they throw this person an off-speed pitch at this amount of times, you'll get them out. But for me, it was like, but how about the times in which they're actually a strike as opposed to a ball?
Right.
Because for me, that's a bigger difference, because then if you're saying, Stephen can't hit a slider, but if you throw me a slider over the plate in the strike zone, I'll crush that thing. So I just started. There was times where people were telling me that my scouting report and all this stuff was like, throw him a 2-strike slider. So sometimes, yes, I would strike out because it was 2 strikes, but I was like hunting sliders with 2 strikes. So like the year I hit like 27 homers that year, like I want to say almost half of them were 2 strikes, and they were on 2 strike sliders just because I was looking for that pitch.
Right.
So it was like things like that where I'm like, analytics is good, bad, but it doesn't really tell like the whole story. It doesn't even tell the true story, really.
Right, right. And Jim, I don't know if you agree with this, but the way I felt, and I think you're a really cerebral guy, like that you really had, number one, I don't think a lot of hitters have an approach or one that we understand as normal people without the analytics, because I think it's so analytically driven, which might be okay. But most of the analytics, and I think what you just described, Steph, is like, it's common sense baseball knowledge. It's stuff we already know as ball players, but didn't necessarily have the data to back it up. Like, don't swing at a 2-1, curveball in the dirt. Don't swing a 2-1 slider because you don't hit sliders well. Okay, I won't swing a 2-1 slider, but I'm gonna swing at a 2-strike slider. Or like 2-0, I'm looking for a premium fastball. I'm looking for a cookie. And I get, and I'll go.
Baseball is a game that's like so easier said than done, right? Like anybody can watch a game. It's like you watch a game on TV, you could be watching with like your dad or somebody, and a guy watches a fastball go by for a strike, and like
it's like, why didn't you swing at that? Right?
Like what is he doing? How could he look at that pitch? Like,
cock shot.
He's terrible. Like somebody waves at a ball in the dirt, and they just can't process like why that would ever happen, because to them, like what they see, it just seems so like simple and clear and obvious, like you said. And the execution is the difference, right? Your ability to execute is what allows you to play at that level. It's not necessarily that that you're not supposed to do this or you're supposed to do that. It's your ability to execute on those things. And like Steph, so you're hunting sliders with 2 strikes. Can you recognize which ones to go after and which ones not to go after? Guys are waving. Some guys can't do that, and they're waving at things in the dirt left and right. And that just is what it is. That's an adjustment that they have to be able to make to be able to continue to play at the highest levels. So you did it at a level that allowed you to go to AAA and hit 27 home runs and be somebody who could play in the big leagues. But, that's the difference. The difference is your ability to execute, not your knowledge of whether or not you know what you were supposed to do in the situation. So anybody can read the data and say, oh yeah, obviously, like, but that's where the difference is. Like, you got to be able to execute.
Yeah.
So what about, Jim, I think you were a really balanced hitter. So did they ever shift on you while you were in the minors? Like a big,
you know what? I would say no. That wasn't something that that didn't really come into play. But there were a few times, like randomly, that people pulled the shift, and I hated it. Obviously,
did that throw you for a loop?
I'm hunting a 4-hole. I'm not. I'm not looking to slap a ball down the left field line necessarily. There were a few times where they put a shift on, but I was able to hit the ball to the opposite field. So shifts didn't become in vogue until after I was there. So. And I'm thankful for that.
Now, what about you, Steph?
Because even as like
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Finish your thought.
No, I'm just saying, like, even as like a 270 career hitter or something, whatever it shook out to. If the shifts were going on in the heat of when I was playing, I wouldn't have been a 270 hitter. I'd have been a 250, 240, 230. Who knows? I don't know. Right. Maybe I would have found a way to adjust, but I'm thankful that shifts weren't in vogue. That's for sure.
What about you, Steph?
Shifting. They started shifting at the end of me playing, like um, when I was like
What was
DH.
your last affiliated year? Was it 2014? Your last affiliated year?
2013 was my last affiliated, and then my last playing was 2015. But yeah, they shifted a little bit. And to be honest with you, I think the White Sox did most of them when I was with the Braves, dude. They were like,
no, they had the inside scoop on you.
Yeah, they kept putting the second base.
Throw him sliders, they'll roll over on him all day. He's hunting them with 2 strikes.
Yeah, and the funny part was, I wish that the shifts actually took away like the stuff from like the left side, but the problem was it would always take away the balls that I would hit up the middle, and that was a frustrating.
Right. Yeah.
That was the part that was super frustrating. It wasn't that like I was like, because like Matt and Jim, that I would hit the ball oppo. It wasn't like I didn't care. Like I felt like I could drive a ball out to right field as much as I could drive a ball to left field and all that. So I didn't really like I would hit a ball to right field, but it was just like always end up where they were like, oh, let's put the second baseman behind second base. And I would hit a line shot right at the second baseman, and I'd be like, what the heck? So it did. And my last season, I would say, and I think it was Charlotte that took a lot of them away from me. There was a lot of base hits up the middle that were taken away from me in my last season.
You just feel that way because we played in the same division.
Yeah.
That's right. You guys played against each other that year?
Yes, we played against.
Yeah,
we lived together for a second, like for literally.
Yeah, about a week maybe.
Yeah, and then we played against each other all the time.
Yeah, those. I mean, 11, 12, and 13, right?
Yep.
You were in Gwinnett.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was fun.
How many years in AAA did you spend?
3 years.
3 years, and
yeah, my last 3 years.
Last 3 years, and Stefan,
5.
3 or 4 years, 5 years. Jeez, man. So I'll start with you, Jim. Did you ever? Was there a point where you felt, man, I've got a shot? I'm gonna get.
Oh my gosh.
Tell me about that, and tell me how many times.
Absolutely. My first year in AAA. So I was coming off an all-star year in Birmingham. I don't want to say, I guess it was a career year. And then I came to spring training in 11, and I wasn't an invite to camp, but I was with the team every single day. Yeah. And I played really, really well. And I had felt like I had done everything that I possibly could have done in that limited opportunity that spring to prove that I was ready to play at that level, or at least be given an opportunity. Hey, this guy's worthy of, setting foot on our Major League Baseball field.
Yeah. How old were you in 2011?
How old was I? 25, I think.
All right. So you were 25. Right in that sweet spot, right?
Right. I was right there. Like it was time. It was time. Yeah. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Coming off my year in LA, it was time. I needed to, put up or shut up at this point. And I went out that first half of the 2011 season in AAA. I had 27 doubles on June 9th. I was going to hit 50 doubles. And Steph remembers what the old Charlotte field was like, and then what the new field was like. It went from being 310 or something, 315 with a short fence, a low fence, to 330 with 2 green monsters out to right and left center field. Yeah, so it was not a home run park. So I was hitting doubles left and right, and I was hitting over 300. Through the middle of June with all these doubles. I'm sitting there like, holy smokes, dude. I could walk into the clubhouse at the end of any game and, get called up. But, just like everything in life, you guys know this, everything's timing and opportunity. And, the timing and opportunity just didn't line up. And, that was the year my mom passed away in the middle of the season. And to be quite honest with you, man, like when I started to realize what was going to happen to her, I went from thinking, holy smokes, I'm going to the big leagues to, wow, my mom's about to die. What's going on here? So we talked about this a little bit before, where baseball is a game where you're in your own head. Mm-hmm. So, the second half of my season didn't finish strong. And then 12 was kind of a wash, and then 13, kind of the same deal. First half of the season, I felt like, I was kind of proving myself again. But the timing and opportunity just never ended up lining up. Just as Steph knows what that's like. We were kind of both the same deal, where we proved that we were capable of playing at that level. Yeah. Some people get an opportunity and, they run with it and they never look back. And other people, get an opportunity and, crap the bed for a week, and then they never get another opportunity. So
right. I mean, for Steph, I can answer for Steph. Alejandro De Aza and Diane Viciedo, right? I mean, like, that's pretty much the reason you never got a call.
And Lastings Millage.
And not better.
Lastings. I love Lastings, man. I'll tell you what.
All three of them are the reasons why.
Yeah.
But did you ever? So, Stefan, I mean, your experience is a little different because, it seemed like they kept getting somebody else rather than giving you a shot.
Yes, the answer to that question is yes. That is exactly what it felt like. Because every single year when I would have, like, I was doing really well, even in just, I would say my first big league spring training was the time when I was like, oh, I'm ready. This is it. Because they just put me on the 40-man roster, and I was like, here we go.
Right.
I'm on my way.
They protected you from the Rule 5, right?
Yes, they did.
Right.
I was like, I'm set. They don't want me to go anywhere. They're ready for me to be in the big leagues. This is amazing. So, like, I'm, like, completely ready. Like, I'm even prepared in my head, like, oh, I'm going to get that phone call. Like, I'm going to get called into the office. I'm ready for this whole talk, all of it. And then I go into spring training, and I have, like, the best spring training I've ever had in my entire life. So, like, the ball wasn't even just the size of the beach ball. It was like it was the size of, like, I felt like the moon. Like, I couldn't miss the thing.
Would you call it a sun?
Yeah, ball of gas. And so I'm like, this whole thing, I'm just like completely, like, locked in. I'm in the zone. That's the first time, like, I'm completely in the zone coming into spring training. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing.
And what year was this?
This was 2000, I want to say 2010. Yeah, okay. 2010. And so right before, Jimmy's there. So we were like, I'm going off. And I believe this is when I got sent down and we had that whole philosophical talk. I was leading the big league camp in home runs, and I was batting probably somewhere close to over like 400 something. Like, just everything was like just matching up and just doing really well. And after they sent me down, like, so Daryl Boston comes up to me. I hit 2 home runs the game before. I walk into that morning, and Debo's just like, man, he's an all-star. He's an MVP of spring training so far. I'm like, yeah. I'm thinking, like, things are great.
Yeah.
And then I go into the clubhouse, and then I see that I'm supposed to talk to Kenny Williams. And I was like, what?
Because it's just the dead man walking.
I know exactly what
the death march. Hey, we all did it. Or I did it. I don't know if Jimmy did it.
So I go into the office, and everybody's in there, like, and Kenny and Ozzy's in there too. Because I was trying to figure out, how are they going to tell me what I was doing isn't good enough, and I'm on the 40-man roster this year? Like, what are they going to say?
Right.
And the thing that they told me was, because this is the year I ended up getting traded too. So they said,
wait, no. You were traded in 11.
No, I was traded in 10.
No, man, because we played together in 11 in Charlotte. Yeah. It
was 11.
Yeah.
So they, like, this is how this whole thing happens. He pulls me in, and he says, hey, Steph, and then he says, hey, Gartrell, you're doing really good. I just want to let you know, like, this is not a anything bad about what you've done. You've done everything you can. You're doing right. We're sitting you down. It's just there's no space for you up here. But I also want you to remember, you're not just playing for the White Sox. You're playing for the other 32 teams.
Oh man.
Oh, shoot.
How many times have we heard that on what is it? Hard Knocks? You hear it all the time, right?
That was when I was like, you guys, there's nothing I can do to make this team. And that's so frustrating.
Absolutely. And I remember watching, and I remember thinking that, both of you guys, and especially Stefan, because they just kept getting younger guys, like, you know, like Deaza, where I was like, why are like, really, they're going this way? You know, like, I remember watching you mash that year, Gartrell. So I think this is a really big question, a really good question.
Mm-hmm.
People, I think there's this misconception out there on how easy it is, or how, like, there's a clear difference between like a big leaguer and a quad A player. You know, your typical grade of AAA can't play well in you know, the big leagues. It's a very small difference between guys that are all-stars and potentially Hall of Famers. It's Daniel Murphy comes to mind for me. Mm-hmm. Actually, Stefan, do you remember we played against Daniel Murphy in 2006?
Yeah, I played with Daniel Murphy when in Fall League.
I think he sucks. I think he sucks.
Stop yourself.
I'm not bitter. I think he sucks. He does everything. Stop. But he is. You guys will agree with this, I think. He is the prototypical guy that has maxed out every ounce of talent he has to be as good as he is. And, you know, give it to him. Give him all the credit. The guy's a wealthy man, made a lot of money, and he's consistent.
That's the big thing about him.
Is he better than you, Stefan? No. I don't think he has more talent than you. Same as Jimmy. Same as Jimmy. He's probably better than me. But I mean, there's guys that Jimmy, you and I, there are guys we played against down. Joe Smith comes to mind. We played against him in Edenton. Remember?
The whole year.
I remember smoking a double off that guy.
I loved it. I loved hitting off him.
Yeah. Well, that's so funny.
And he's one of the best relievers in the major leagues.
That's a good point. With Joe Smith, a couple years ago, I don't know if he was one of the 9, but the World Series, Cubs, Indians.
Yes.
It was like game 2. I don't even remember what game number it was, but, you know, Steph knows this. You put on those games and you see countless guys that you played with or against, right?
Right.
And that game of the World Series, you know, I think it was Arrieta was the starter, Bauer was the starter for the Indians, and then it was just a collection of relievers after that. I think I'd faced the first 9 pitchers in that game. And, you know, one of them was a college teammate that I had hit multiple home runs off of. Right. So, you know, you watch those games and you see those guys that, you know, you were right there. And anybody can, you know, you could flip on the statistics, you know, Baseball Reference, whatever. And timing and opportunity is, you know, what it's ultimately all about. And for me and Steph, that just never lined up. But the reality is we were right there. And I don't watch a major league game ever, or step into a major league park, whether that's, you know, the Pirates right down the road, you know, and think to myself, man, I don't belong on that field. I know that I belong. I know that I was right there. And hey, I'm not bitter at all. It was absolutely amazing experience. It's, you know, I got to live out a dream that we all grew up having, and, you know, I'm thrilled about that. But I'm well aware, and I know Steph's well aware, that we were right there, and it just as soon could have been us. That timing and opportunity just didn't line up.
And that's what that is the luck portion.
Yeah,
you know, to put it in one word, but timing and opportunity is exactly right. That's the luck portion. You can do every single thing you were supposed to do. Yep. You can be good enough, and you two were good enough. I mean, I like to think I was good enough, but I mean, like, it's that old thing, you know. And you know what? There are many times in my own career where I played, and either I go out and I shit the bed for 2 weeks, and then, like, actually in Jim, the year we played down in Virginia, I think I was batting .063 the first 10 or 20 games of the season. I hit over 400 the next 40.
I remember.
And it was like, but it was like no one, if you come out those first 2 weeks, you guys know this, any season, if you come out those first 2-3 weeks and you're raking, you are considered a hitter the rest of the season. Even if you go in a little lengthy slump, you were a hitter. Yep. And people remember this. It's that first impression.
Yeah.
So
no doubt about it.
I think so. Here's my next question before we get into the fun stuff, because I want you guys to give our fans some inside Ozzy stuff, because I have inside Ozzy stuff and Debo's, and I want some stories because they'll our fans will eat it up. But I'm curious. I went through a struggle after baseball where it was like I voluntarily walked away. I got cut, but I didn't get hurt. I didn't chase it anymore. I was just like, you know what? I think I'm just done with it. I can do something else. There was this 5-year period afterwards where it was like, can I do it again? Can I go back? Can I figure it out? What am I without baseball? It's this athlete's kind of struggle in any sport. Yeah. So I'm curious if you guys went through it. Start with you, Jim.
Steph, you can take that. I'll piggyback off you.
Okay. Mine was different because
I feel like you still think you could just go out tomorrow if you wanted to and hit 30 bombs.
Nah, I know I can't, because I've picked up a bat and I've been like, ooh, that don't feel as good. But it was okay. The thing that changed for me, one, I would say a big part of me being able to kind of handle stepping away from baseball, one is my faith. That helped a lot, because that was like a big part of like understanding that I'm not just a baseball player. That wasn't my full identity. I'll say this: the first time I was released, I cried like a baby.
Hard not to.
But then the second time I was released, I was sad. The third time I was released, I was like, whatever, I've been here, done this, So then when I retired, I was like, all right, I had my son, I was married, I had other things going on. And then I started also starting the program. There's things that I got to do that I was like, you know what, this is what I'm going to do now. But I will say this, watching a baseball game that year was really tough. I wasn't jealous or bitter that I stepped away, because I was super busy doing what I was doing and found a lot of fulfillment in doing, being a dad, working, doing developing the program, being a great husband, all this stuff. I just gave myself a pat on the back saying I'm a great husband.
That's okay. It was low hanging fruit. You can
Don't flatter yourself.
But all that stuff. But then the issue was watching the game, and I was doing the whole thing, like Jim, you were talking about, where I was like, I could hit that. Or this guy, I crushed this dude every single time he did anything, and yet he's in the All-Star game or something, just stuff like that, where I'm like, ah. So it took me
you belong.
Yeah, it took me a year to kind of get past that, because the other part that was sucky too was,
I love that you just used sucky.
I said sucky. The part that sucked for me was just the fact that when I had just been removed, when the White Sox would play either the A's or the Giants, guys would call me and be like, hey, come to the game. And so because they had tickets for me, or on with the Braves,
they guilt you into going, oh, come on, man, I don't want to go.
I would show up to the games, and it was they'd be like, what's up? Da, da, da. And it was great. But then I'm like, this is my former teammate playing at NT Park, and I'm watching them as opposed to being out there with them. And
really strange feeling, isn't it?
It's super strange. You're happy for them because they're in the minor leagues with you.
But you feel like you should be in that dugout.
Exactly. You're
this is so true.
I remember feeling that way with you, Steph.
I know you did. You verbalized it, which made it super awkward for me.
I didn't mean to make you feel bad. Damn.
I was like, "Hey, Maddie."
But it is. It's I remember going to pick you up, and everybody's getting on the bus, and I see Wander Perez and other guys, and I'm like, and they're just. I was like, it's just weird. Like there's a fence. It's almost symbolic. There is a fence between you and that field. It's almost Field of Dreams like, where it's like you can't go by that fence anymore. But you used to be on the other side of that fence. So what about you, Jim? What about you?
So my experience was a little different because I still had that year of school hanging over my head. I was drafted as a junior.
Right.
So I ended up going back to Duke as a 29-year-old. And that was an experience in and of itself. I mean, to be 29 years old back in that environment, it on one hand, it was a really cool experience. Being able to be in the classroom with no worries about baseball at all, right? When I was there when I originally went to Duke, I went there to play baseball. Right. And I was a good student, but the reality is my focus was not in the classroom as opposed to being on the field. So going back and doing that was a really, really cool experience. And we could probably have a whole nother deal talking about that.
Right.
But I'll say it was a real challenge to figure out what the heck I wanted to do with my life after baseball. I didn't really want to do like the lessons and the coaching, that type deal. I enjoyed doing that stuff, but it wasn't something that I wanted to do long term. So it took some time, and mentally that was a battle. It was a battle to figure out what I was going to do beyond baseball. Kind of like Steph. I mean, same faith. Right. And, that's what you're grounded in as a human being. But, what we do on the day to day, that's what I had to figure out, because all I had done to that point was baseball, know, and, it took some time, but, through it all, it was, you find your way, and, where I'm at now, it's, the same things that he talked about, where, you go out to a game and, you catch up with those guys, and, all you think to yourself is that you belong there with them. Like, that's where you belong. That's where you are good enough to be there. I mean, like, take the White Sox, like James McCann. I played on Team USA with him. Like, there's still guys you flip on. You flip on a game, and these guys you played with and against. Brandon Geyer. Like, we were freshmen in the ACC together. He was at Virginia. I was at Duke. We were, 3-year starters, drafted as juniors, and he's still doing his thing. And I'm truly pulling for him, and all these guys. So it's cool to see that they're all still playing. It's also, dang.
It's like the way, and I think you guys, I think what you're saying is kind of this. It's like when I see Danny Valencia every time at bat. Visually in my mind, I go back to the games I played against him, to the conversations I have with him.
Oh, of course.
In between innings. And I'm just 100%. Like, damn, it's not, I mean, I've gotten past my bitterness, but that is where I go. It's like, I was on the same field. I did well against them. You guys know, it, that difference, even from A ball to the major leagues, guys wash out, but some guys, it's just right there. Yeah. So anyway, that's pretty cool. I'm glad you guys had this conversation with me. So that's all good stuff, man. That's all good stuff. And we were all fortunate, all three of us fortunate to get to play the game at the level we did. Yeah.
We all know that there were guys that didn't get the opportunity that you knew were good enough.
Right.
So just like us having to step away from the game after our time with the White Sox, people had to walk away from it in college. They didn't get the opportunity, and they were good enough.
Right.
So,
and it's a relearning.
Such is life.
Right. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But it also, like you said, like there was a period where you had to kind of figure out what's next, because your options
100%.
as a baseball player are, I go here, I go this way, I set this goal, and I move. And I know what my next step is and what I'm supposed to do. And I'll never forgive myself for I've only ever been cut from one team in my life. and that was it. And I just stopped. So like when you were saying that, Steph, I was like, damn, like he's right. You know, like you got cut 3 times, and the first time hurts because it's the first time in your life that you've probably been told you're not good enough.
Yep.
Or that we don't want you.
Yep.
And that was I walked away. Other people, I have other friends that played in other organizations that like literally I'm like, why do you keep going back? Are you like a cutter? Like you just keep getting cut, but you keep going, you know?
Yeah.
And I admire them for doing that. And some people make it to the big leagues and do that. I think Kevin Millar was one of those guys, you know, like made it in through independent ball.
Yeah.
You sound like you wanted to say something, Jim.
Yeah, that's the one regret that I do have is, you know, when I didn't get so I played out that rookie contract with the White Sox, and they, you know, didn't re-sign me, and you know nobody else did either. And I had, you know, the Atlantic League calling, you know, to go do that thing, which you hear that story every single year.
Every year,
you know, somebody gets signed out of there. And, you know, in my case, you know, I had that opportunity and I just basically said, you know, I need to get on with my life's work. And even though I had no clue what my life's work was, I just said that to myself. You know, I had a wife, kid,
right.
And, you know, I needed to figure out what I was going to do. But that's the regret that I have. And, you know, I've said that to my dad. It's like, why didn't you tell me that I had to go, that I should have done that?
Oh, man.
You know,
yeah.
We could have a whole nother show about this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My dad told me the year I stopped playing, he said, my summer sucks. And I'm like, why? He's like, because I can't come watch you play. I'm like, oh, my God. Oh, my God.
That's the truth,
Isn't
though.
it?
I know, you know, you talk about that adjustment, right? My dad dealt with that same thing. Like he had been, you know, watching me play sports my entire life. And, you know, not having that chapped him off. That chapped him off for sure.
I'm sure.
All the more reason he should have told me, go sign with the Atlantic, with Bridgeport or whoever.
Yeah, right.
So,
all right, so listen, we got to put a bow on this, but we might have a second session sometime.
Cool.
So before we go, we need to give the White Sox fans a little something here. I need your best Ozzie Guillen story. Stefan, you kick it off.
Oh man,
I'll share mine. I'll start mine. I only have one experience. First of all, I love Ozzie. He's hilarious, but screw him. I was cut for his son, Oni. I remember taking ground balls with Oni Guillen. Dude came up to my waist. God bless you, Oni. I'm sure you're a great dude.
Oni.
But literally,
he is a good dude. I like Oni. I like Oni. He's the man.
Yeah. And I think he'll laugh at this, but he literally came up to my waist and didn't start in college. And all of a sudden he's like, I get cut, and he's like taking big league hacks. Whatever. Cool. All right. Ozzie Guillen, man. That guy, hilarious. I remember we were sitting, it was early in spring training. One guy had gone up and taken a big league at bat and tucked his pants underneath his heels on his cleats. And Alan Regier comes walking up, and he talks like this. And he's like, listen, if they're, you don't come up to the big leagues and tuck your pants on your shoes. Who does that?
That's a good Regier impression, by the way.
And then Ozzie, like a little leprechaun, pops out from behind him, and he's on the mound. He's like, hey, guess what, guys? Guess what? And you remember the facial hair rule with the White Sox. Only a mustache, right?
Yep.
Meanwhile, Danks is out there with like this thing coming off his chin. And I'm like, why don't you have him? So Ozzie says, hey, guys, guess what? I don't care. You hit 350 in the big leagues. You can play buck naked. I don't care. He's like, you hit 350 in the big leagues, you can do that. And he's doing it like that broken. Man, he was an absolute ball of energy. He came up to me one time, we were doing bunting, and he watches like everybody, even like the lowest rung guys. And we're doing bunting drills. He comes out, he slaps me on the back. He's like, Nuko, you be able to do it like this. Boom, 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 boom. One-handed. And I'm like, okay, Ozzie, you're not doing it one-handed, but all right. That ATEC machine is shooting like 90-mile-an-hour bullets at you from 10 feet away. But go ahead. I want your story.
Okay. My Ozzie Guillen story is the stuff that he did before I got to big league camp. Because you were 100% correct. Ozzie, I think he liked hanging out in the minor league levels more than he liked being in the big league levels. Because
just funny.
Dead serious. Because like Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, but Joey Cora pretty much ran spring training stuff, right? Like,
I think Joey being there definitely allowed Ozzy the opportunity to, have a little different,
Maybe in his golf
role.
cart with Kenny.
Yeah,
I mean, Joey was pretty dialed in. He had everything in order. He's the one who came and got the players and said, "Hey, you're in the game, this and that." So Ozzy could just be himself.
Yeah, Ozzy was. Yeah, I feel like Ozzy just was like there for fun. And so when I was in minor league camp, like I want to say it might have been my first year. Like I think it was in Tucson, and for the big part, I would almost say for about 2 weeks, Ozzy thought I was Dominican.
That's funny.
So that's my story because he was
that is really funny.
Expect you to speak it back.
So much Spanish to me, and I was like, and because it was Ozzy again, I was like, I don't know.
You're just going along with it, right? Because you don't want to be like, no, I'm American. I speak English.
Like, do I correct him or just let it go? So I just kind of let it go.
And so you just nod, right? You're like,
somebody said something, and I think because he was like calling me over for something, but he was saying it in Spanish, and I couldn't understand what he was saying. So then so
that's so good.
Like, dude, he's black. And he's like, oh. So after that, he would like me and him, especially when I got to big league camp, he would like always just joke around with me. But it was just really funny that's how it started. It was like he was speaking Spanish to me.
Yeah. Jim, what about you?
So for me, my Aussie story, I think it was spring training 2010. I was headed to Birmingham that year, and like I was getting called up all the time to play, and I got a random start. It was in where was Texas? Were they surprised?
Yes. Good. No. They're surprised with
Kansas City. So we were. I got a random start out of nowhere. Like I have no idea why. I mean,
just like okay.
It made no sense to me. But I got a random start. Hey, I was thankful for it. It was great. But Scott Feldman was starting for Texas, and he's just throwing cutters in on my hands. But my first at bat, I got up there and I was like all geeked up, and I hacked first pitch. I didn't even realize he was throwing cutters. Like I had no idea. Cuts in on my hands, busts my bat, and it hit a little dribbler to second base. 0 for 1. Next at bat, take a couple pitches this time. Cutter in on my hands, another broken bat to second base, 0 for 2. I come up for my third at bat, and Aussie, they sit outside the dugout right there. And
he gave you a short bat.
No, he looked at me and he's like, "Gally, you're gonna break another F." He uses the F word. You're gonna break another bat. I'm like, no, I'm not. I swear, But
and the whole time you're digging in, you're like, oh, just stay away.
Exactly. You know what? What's funny? I didn't like outright break the bat, but I think the bat actually broke in my third at bat. I was 0 for 3. I think I might have popped up to center field or something. Went 0 for 3 with 3 broken bats. So
that's a great thing.
Yeah, that there was a whole lot more to that day, and that's a story in and of itself. But that's probably the best Aussie story that I can remember about my interactions with him. So
that's great. That's great.
He was funny. He was really funny.
Steph, did he give you a short bat one time?
No, he was. There was another time I got hit with a pitch on my knee in big league camp, like bad, like 96 or something like that.
Yeah.
And I go down, and because you know how it is. If you get hurt, you're like, man, I'm trying to make the team. I'm not already there, so I can't
make the club in the tub.
Yeah, so I'm trying to get to the field or get to the to first base, and he's like cussing me out because he's like, "Are you dumb? Sit down." And he's like, "Your knee's probably broken."
Your knee's probably broken.
He's sit down. I was like, no. He was like, he had to force me off the field and he was just like, it was the funniest like cuss out though, because he was just like, what are you doing? Sit down. This is spring training. I was like, I gotta stay out the field.
Yeah, you felt like you had to though.
Right? Yeah, you do.
You can't not be on the field. You can't not be on the field. You have to play.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes
to your detriment. To your detriment.
Exactly.
For sure.
Well, guys, listen, we've gone over our time a little bit, but this was fantastic. I hope you guys had as much fun as I did. We haven't seen each other in a long time.
Years.
Jim,
for sure,
I haven't
seen
you since 2005. Steph, we've talked, but I haven't seen your lovely face in a while. You still look the same though. If you're over 230, you don't show it in your neck.
Awesome.
Well, listen, we may have to do this again. Maybe sometime midsummer. We'll get back after it, and we'll have our text message threads going.
Perfect.
Going pretty strong. All right, guys. Listen, really
enjoyed it, guys. Good catching up with you guys.
Yeah. It's been too long, bro.
All right. Cool.
Good stuff.
That's that's the end of it. But I really appreciate you guys taking the time, man. I had a great time. I mean, I'd literally be here for hours.
Oh, I know. That
from school, so I gotta go.
We know each other, so exactly. We know that we could sit here for another couple hours. I totally hear you on that, but good stuff, man. I enjoyed it.
Cool. Yeah. Hey, listen, don't be shy on the Twitter or not the Twitter thread, the text thread. Fire out jokes if you want. I'm all for it. I'm on the phone all the time. That's my job.
Best of luck to you guys, and we'll stay in touch for sure.
All right, man.
Vacation. Let me know out here, because mine's the only place that you actually vacation.
I won't be vacationing to San Fran.
Come on, people do it all the time.
I'll just go and not tell you that I'm there.
Oh, that's messed up.
I'll just move in. So,
peace.
All right, guys. Good catching up. See ya.
Take it easy, guys.